Hey guys, welcome back to the Gamer Gym podcast. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to talk about the metagame. Alright guys, welcome back to the Gamer Gym podcast. As I said, today we're going to be talking about the metagame, and we actually have a guest with us today. We have John from Team Build Better. What's up, John?
How's it going?
And he's going to be with us today as we discuss the metagame. But before we get started, I just want to remind you guys, if you want to find out more about us, you can find us on gamergym.net, and you can email questions to us at podcast@gamergym.net, or you can find us on Facebook or Twitter at gamergympodcast. And then, of course, we try to put up information about our posts, relevant links, and card information, things like that on the website if you want to check that out. And we'd love to get your questions. If you guys have ideas, comments on what we've talked about, or ideas for an episode, definitely send those in. We'd love to hear from you. And so, just before we dive in, what have you been up to this week, Chris? PowerShell.
I have had no time for anything but PowerShell this week.
So just in case our listeners don't know, you might describe just a little bit of what PowerShell is.
It's a scripting language for automating computer stuff, pretty much.
It's definitely a headache.
Yeah.
Definitely a headache.
Sounds boring.
Oh, yeah. It really
we're
is.
talking about games.
So
We are.
boring.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. So
Here, well, liven it up, John. What have you been up to this week?
A lot of editing. Oh, my lord.
sounds boring.
I'm boring. I'm boring too.
Oh man,
A lot of verses.
that is really boring. See, I've spent a lot of time this week sorting my versus cards. I've been de-decking everything. I haven't got to play any versus.
I did get all my sleeves though today, so I
See
did
that.
sleeve all of my cards and got my base set and my alien set all put in there now.
That is exciting.
So,
Well, and I got a shipping confirmation for my second sets of the rest of the Versus sets I'm missing, and also Android Netrunner. So if any of you guys are interested in Netrunner, we're going to be talking about that game soon, just as soon as I get my copy. John is trying to throw up all over the microphone.
sorry,
I guess you don't
I
like
was-
You don't like Netrunner?
I like good games.
I mean, I've never played it before. It looked kind of fun, so we're going to give it a try.
I've heard it's complicated.
It's not the booster pack one. It's the new one, the living card game one. So
Yeah, but for a living card game, that game is a money sink.
Oh, is it really?
You have to buy multiple copies. Like unlike Versus, where you have to buy
Right.
one copy to have a playset, you have to buy X copies to have a playset.
well, and I believe that's kind of the structure of Fantasy Flight living games, aren't they?
Yeah, I think
Because they do that with their Lord of the Rings game, which I've also
X-Wing
played.
is kind of the same way.
Yeah.
If you want certain modules or
so.
certain modifiers for
Their
ships.
newest game, Star Wars Destiny, is
Yeah.
full booster.
That's
packs,
booster
so-
packs, yeah.
So I demoed that game a week or two ago. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
not my style, but it's fun.
Well, I got a pre-order. I thought about picking it up at Gen Con, but I didn't have the resources. But I did pre-order Legend of the Five Rings, which is their next big card game. Because that
I'm
was
excited
a
about that
booster
one, too.
pack, and now they're making it a living card game. And they did say that if you want to have all the cards, you've got to buy at least 2 core sets.
Yeah, that game had a huge following.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would not be surprised
I'm looking forward to it.
if that game is very successful.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I'm pretty sure actually that they ran out of copies that they were giving away at Gen Con.
That makes sense.
So, because they only had a limited run of the ones that they had, and I'm not sure if it was the core set or if it was just a preview kit, but they ran out.
Tournaments for that game is an experience, to say
Yeah.
the least, because everyone is very like it's like most games where it has different factions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But people are very hardcore into the factions that they
So
play,
they have a
and
very,
they will.
very strong metagame.
Well, they also they'll cosplay as their characters.
Yeah.
And, whoever, I don't know how they're gonna do it now, but it used to be whoever won like whatever faction they were playing, like affected the storyline. Like,
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I heard is
Yeah.
that those clans, because I believe that's what it is the different clans,
Yeah.
the winners would actually shape the story, and then future sets would be different based on what clans won things, tournaments and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I know that they've talked about wanting to bring back all of those mechanics with this game. So, I'm hoping for good things, and I got a couple sets.
With
So
the
that we'll have a
storyline
place to
aspect
everything.
that they're adding, I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like, I get the money sink thing, because especially when you get into one of the Fantasy Flight living card games after it's been out for a while, because, like, Netrunner is just getting to the point where they're rotating out sets.
Mhm.
And so, like, I just bought the core set because that's the only one that I know is safe. There's other sets that are out there. I know there's some that aren't playable. There's some that are getting ready to not be playable and stuff like that. But it definitely makes it interesting. So we're going to talk about the metagame. And so just kind of a definition that I found from meta is that it's a prefix meaning beyond or outside. And so metagame kind of refers to the game outside of the game, or the game beyond the game. And so, like, to kind of put that in layman's terms, it's more of the psychology and sociology of the game. And so, like Versus has, because that's a game we talk about a lot, we play a lot. Versus has its own set of rules and its own cards, and we could look at cards and we could say this card is objectively good. I heard somebody say if you put all the cards in a database and it built optimum decks and played against optimum decks and made the perfect plays every time, we could actually get data on whether cards are good or not. But none of that stuff matters in a metagame. It's almost the opposite of that, because cards are only good if people are playing the cards that those cards are good against. I think of, what's the card in Magic? Plummet. Destroy a creature with flying.
Right.
Most of the time that card's really good, because flying's really good. But if nobody in the game started playing flying creatures, that card's worthless now, right? And that's just a meta call, and that's a really weird example, but that kind of describes what we're talking about. So what do you guys think a metagame is? Like, how would you describe it to somebody who doesn't know what that is, or the concept?
So metagame is as you said, kind of like the sociology in a certain area as well. So that can affect either your local game store, your LGS as people call it. That can affect just your normal, like if you don't go to a game store, that that's just your friends that you play with. Like what kind of decks do they enjoy playing? That's going to be your meta. So that's.
As a control player, I've always had to choose to not play certain decks with my friends.
If all you play against is your spouse, then you don't really have any real deck options there. I mean, you build what is good against what your spouse is playing, especially if you make their deck too.
Man.
Yeah, I mean that's my kind of opinion of what a meta is what you're going into whenever you go to play. So like if you're going to a tournament, what decks are going to be good in a tournament scene? What decks are going to be good at the card shop scene? So
yeah, he's definitely right. Like it largely depends on who the group of people you're going to play is, right? So I've been actively in games for about 20 years. So I've traveled a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a lot of places with them. If you take Magic, for instance, if you're going to a tournament down in Texas, down in the South, for whatever reason, they are very aggro heavy. There could be a dominant combo deck in the format. You will still go down to Texas and you will see about 60-70% of the players playing aggro down there.
That's really interesting.
If you go to the upper, the northwest area, the Portland, those kind of areas, combo will run rampant. It's actually really interesting, like seeing how different areas.
that kind of ties into the sociology aspect of it.
Yeah, because
personalities,
like, different regions have evolved through gaming in different ways. Those play styles are different. You can kind of see it in like the video game community too.
Mm-hmm.
Less now than what it used to be because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you could be used to playing a game with your friends and your friend circle meta, I guess, and you're like, oh, this deck's really good. But then you go to a national or a regional of some sort, and you realize not everyone plays like your friends, and you feel real silly. So that's my take on what a meta is. It's largely the group and where you're at or who you're going to see.
Yeah. Well, and another way I've heard it described is it's a psychology of how a group of players think they can win. Because I guess a meta call, is you're deciding, is this card good in my deck against my opponent? And that's why it's the game outside of the game, is you're trying to predict your opponent's plays before you've even seen his deck, before you even know who he is, What's kind of an effect, and this is a very leading question for you, John, but what's a big result whenever a certain kind of deck wins a big event, like Origins this last year?
So like Origins last year, Thor ran rampant. I've actually played Thor at Origins because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's the best at the time without putting any real thought into. I didn't really have a group that I could play test with as much as I would have liked to go outside of that level of comfort zone. It's how good Thor was, right? I knew there was a few decks that could beat him and that were good against him, but I didn't have a chance to test them enough to be like, okay, yeah, this is worth playing. So Thor is highly aggro. He's just trying to put a wound on you every turn, and shift over to Gen Con, you knew that people were going to be ready for a hyper-aggressive deck. They were going to find a way to slow down. So, in my mind, the metagame was going to be the super fast deck that people who couldn't figure out how to beat it were going to play. So you probably can have a little lenience there because they're not as they don't have as big of a play group, which means they're probably not as experienced players. And then your more experienced players are doing everything in their power to slow the game down. And then you come in and you try to prey upon that.
Well, right, because they're either going to find a way to control Thor and slow him down, or there were a couple people there who were actually trying to race Thor with decks like Venom and things like that. And then we even had one in the top 8, which was a Thor that beats Thor. Which,
good old
right.
Ryan. Good guy.
Yeah. And I was, knowing what we were walking into, I was quite surprised that any Thor made it in the top 8. But, I played against that guy, and that was a very different build Thor that I'd ever played against before. Okay, so with that in mind, what does the role of a metagame fill in a tabletop game? Like, how does it make a game more fun? Or, because when we're talking about a game, we're trying to have fun. That should be objective number 1, right?
John disagrees.
The game is not about community fun. The game is about my fun. I can do the analogy where when you open up a board game, it comes with 100 fun chips. And the object is to take all the fun chips and give you as little as possible.
If your opponent's having fun, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly.
Wow.
But my play group, aka my meta, for any game, we are all very competitive. So, it works for my group. It's group tuning, right?
Well, but in that regard, that is fun for everyone, because at that point, you're showing up, and we're playing a game because we want to be challenged. Because right. I mean, I consider myself part of your play group, even if I'm a reserve member. But I'm like one of the backup Avengers. You know, I got the little card, but I don't actually go.
You don't get a suit.
I don't know how
I don't get a room at the mansion.
I don't know how like familiar you are with like the actual Defenders, like how the team actually works. But like you have your big four, right? You have your Silver Surfer, you have your Hulk, you have your Doctor Strange, and you have who was the other one? Namor.
Okay.
Like these are the guys that take care of business. They take down like galactic evils, things that come to Earth like that. But other people who are technically a part of the Avengers are like Valkyrie and like your Cages and your Iron Fists, and they're what they call like they're commonly referred to as they're commonly referred to as like by like comic book fans as the B team, right?
Okay.
Their job on the team is to go challenge this great evil, not to beat it, but to stall it until one of the big four can show up and take care of it.
I see. Okay. There you go.
Welcome to the B team.
Well, welcome to the B team. Wow, thank you.
I'm your host, Namor.
Thank you for that. But yeah, like I mean, that is fun though, is showing up and getting to play against people because like not to stroke your ego at all, but when I show up to play with you guys, I like playing against people who are better than me.
Right.
You know, because that's a way that I get better.
Yeah,
and then sometimes I have to play a game with Vito, and you know, like
make yourself feel better about
yeah, exactly. You know. But yeah, like, and that's a different kind of fun, but that's a different meta for fun.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I'm not saying that I can't walk into a room and like play a game and like not be competitive, like, and not just like try to play it to have fun, but like. If I'm going to sit down, I'd rather play a game that's competitive, like player versus player, and like it challenges your thinking. Like that's why I sit down to play a game, not like a co-op game, right?
Right.
Because like a co-op game, you run into a lot of problems with my style of playing because you got people who like don't have as much fun. If I do like try to think of like the most like efficient way to do things, while other people are just like there to like. Let's just play and have fun and see what happens. And I'm like, oh, well, we gotta be efficient so we can crush this thing, right?
Like, I've talked about Legendary a lot on this podcast, and I know you and I have both played Legendary, and you and I play functionally similar, which is what's the best play to make here?
Right.
But I think we finish that sentence differently because I go, what's the best play for us when I'm playing Legendary, and you go, what's the best play for me?
How can I load you up with wounds?
Yeah, how can I give Patrick a bunch of wounds or shield officers that he doesn't need so that I get more victory points?
This is a perfect example because we actually talked a little bit at Gen Con about Legendary. I have never played the game of Legendary in a non-competitive environment. That includes encounters, which is a
that is a competitive, more competitive.
And so, like, I have never, ever played the game in a if it wasn't in a tournament setting, it was to learn how to play the game, like to get familiar with the game for a tournament setting, so that we were playing in a way to try to sabotage each other as much, which is widely referred to as like a co-op game.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I've never played it cooperatively in my entire 5 years of playing that game. I've played the game since the first one. Right? I played it only once or twice a year.
And the first one had very little ways to actually interact with other players in a negative way.
Right, but we found them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but that's the difference, right? That's how meta games work. It's all about who you're playing with.
Yeah, because like when I played Legendary with my dad, it's all about we're trying to actually beat the mastermind. There's no consideration of who's doing better than the other, who gets victory points. We always do the shootout at the end, and we do compare victory points just for a ha-ha, you know. Yeah. But like,
but at the end of the game, it's we beat the mastermind.
Yeah, and that's the games that I remember most are actually the ones that we've lost because it took us so long to beat Apocalypse, you know. Mm-hmm. And he's constantly destroying your hand. With the Master Strike, and then his group that he always leads is just shutting you down. They inflict wounds all over the place, and you know we were trying to do it without giving him a scheme that just made it easier or something. Right. You know, it was a challenge. We wanted it to be hard, but we wanted to beat it as a team.
Oh, definitely.
But the first time I played Legendary with you guys, We played Villains when it was brand new. And for anybody who hasn't played Legendary Villains, that one is you're playing all of the bad guys against the good guys. And because they're bad guys, there's a lot more ways to interact with each other. Venom is like eating bystanders out of other players' victory piles. Like, you're literally taking away victory points from other people to get more attack and more money.
It's funny because in all of my experience of playing Legendary, there's been multiple times where it's like, okay, I'm up by probably 7 points, 10 points, but they can catch up easily, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to let the villain win, so the game's over, so that I win.
So that I win. Yeah, because I'm ahead in points.
Right,
I had to do that at Gen Con.
I'll just go ahead and let us lose so that we can be done so that I can win.
Right.
Predator Encounter, I just need to put this in as a little footnote for this, is the best Legendary set that I've ever played. Out of all of them. And going into it, my brother's a huge Predator fan. I knew nothing about Predator. After playing the Predator Legendary, I was like, this is pretty cool. There's a lot of flavor in it. You get to learn about the characters, but like it's also like you can attack each other, which I love. and there's you're not all the same Predator, so you have a little individuality as far as like you have a secret objective that you're trying to get, and it adds individuality rather than.
Interesting.
It is hands down the best Legendary set I've ever played.
That's actually the only Legendary one I haven't got to play yet. So
I'm surprised that you don't love the Lord of the Rings deck building game.
You bring it over or invite me over, and I will be happy to play it.
I can see you building a full enemies deck.
I'm down. The only thing I'm worried about with that game, and which this is everyone's going to give me crap, and everyone does not be a popular opinion in this room. I don't like Lord of the Rings.
I mean, that's fine.
Here's the thing. A few years ago, I would have harped on you for that. But I think it was about 3 years ago, I did a watch party where we watched all 3 of the original Lord of the Rings extended editions in one day.
Thank you for not inviting me.
I'm still burnt out on Lord of the Rings, and I've never really forgiven that series for that. And so I just, if you don't like Lord of the Rings, I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I really don't either. I just don't talk about it.
When I start a movie, I pride myself on any movie I start, I usually finish.
Right.
There's probably about 5 movies in my life that I've started and didn't finish. On that list is the second Lord of the Rings. I finished the first one, and then I got about halfway through the second one. I'm like, click, I'm done. I can't. The other one was the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds. I walked out. I got my money back on. I saved 5. Those are the only 2 I remember. I'm just kind of giving myself a little buffer there. I'm sure there's somewhere that I'm like, this movie is terrible. But I watch B movies and actively enjoy them and finish them.
Well, and that's the thing. Going to a movie and actively making fun of it's a little bit different. Because I remember me and a bunch of Dragon Ball Z fans knew that live-action Dragon Ball Z movie back in like 2009 was going to be trash. And so we waited until it was in the dollar theater, went out there, and there were like 6 of us in the theater, and we all knew each other, and we heckled the movie together. And that was one of the most fun I've ever had watching the movie. That movie was garbage.
And I sat down and I finished that movie.
Yeah, we all did too.
But that's all really topic.
It's true.
But yeah, invite me over. I'll come play it.
Well, what I'm probably going to do is bring it over here and we're going to play it.
Whatever.
It's true.
As long as I'm invited and as long as
stuff.
Yeah.
As long as I get to crush you guys.
We need to make this game thing more often because otherwise we're never going to get to do game reviews.
Right.
So,
okay, so
or play games.
Healthy, unhealthy meta. We're just going to combine it into one
big thing because it really like it's very point of view.
Well, and does anybody ever notice a healthy meta? I guess is what I would ask.
Probably not until after.
Because we can look back and we can say, no, that was a really good meta, But whenever there's an unhealthy meta, I usually feel it, and then I start to break down cards, and I go, oh, Thor's the only thing being played.
I would say it depends, right? Because I feel like right now you're talking about a competitive environment, right?
Yeah.
Because the meta mainly affects a competitive environment. Usually, the people who notice that we're in a good meta are the higher level players. they are the first to recognize it. There's a reason they're the higher level players.
Right.
It's because they're more observant. They understand more concepts, right? While it's easy to, and so that's why you hear about a good meta less often than you hear about a bad meta, is because it's easy to jump on the this is bad train, right? It's easier to see the negative in things than it is to find the good in things.
Right.
And it's easier to get that mob mentality when people don't 100% understand what they are fighting against, I guess. Like, what they're saying is a bad meta, or why they're saying it's a bad meta. So it's easier for people who aren't fully informed to make that kind of decision than it is for someone who's not fully informed to make a decision that, oh, this is healthy, right?
That makes sense. I mean, I think of games that I have considered a healthy meta. You talked about you notice it after the fact, and I'm probably not a top level player because I only notice it after the fact. But
not bad.
No, you got me good.
I did not mean to burn it, but I'll take it.
Return to Ravnica in Magic was a really good meta. There were so many different decks that happened at the time. And like there was a deck that was overarchingly good for what it was, which was Delver. Right. But there were a lot of really good answers for Delver at that time.
Oh yeah.
And there were a lot of other decks that were fun to play that had that rock paper scissors. That may have been on the previous take, but you talked about rock paper scissors Lizard Spock, where in kind of a healthy meta you've got these 5 decks that can all kind of beat each other. But it's also not,
it's not a death sentence.
Right,
it also comes down to what you said, play style, and
any format or meta where you can play whatever style, not necessarily like I want to play this card and it's going to be competitive, but like I like this style, I like control, I like aggro, I like mid range, I like combo. If any meta where you can find the style that you like to play, and there is a deck that you can play that is competitive or at least like in the upper ranks of the decks,
right?
That has a shot, right? Like that is a healthy meta because anybody can jump in and play a style they enjoy and not feel like they're behind the 8 ball.
Well, and I think this is not to preview next week too much when we talk about game balance, but I think that you can have an unhealthy meta in a balanced game, but you probably can't have a healthy meta in an unbalanced game. Because if there's actually cards that are objectively oppressive, then that can create situations where you can't play things. And an example of this would be, I know you guys probably don't play this very much or at all, but Star Wars Destiny. They printed a card a while back, and I'm probably going to get it totally wrong, but Sith Holocron was basically, I believe it was a 1 cost that would let you play an equipment for free. And equipment is really good. And you could do that over and over and over with this card. And so it became this thing where equipment, which is already a foundational piece of this game, now nearly all of it's free. And so you can play these oppressive decks that are using really good equipment that should be later on in the game. You're playing it early, and you're getting just a ridiculous amount of card advantage from this Holocron. Everybody's playing it. There's not a good counter. There's not a good way to shut down the Holocron. And not that silver bullets are good, but like in a situation like that...
Silver bullets are great. Silver bullets are great for meta because it keeps things in check. And from a meta point of view, silver bullets are great because not everyone can play a silver bullet.
I mean, that's true too.
But you need them, right?
Yeah.
The balancing discussion for next week, little John footnote here, will be very interesting because I don't 100% believe that there is such a thing as a balanced game.
I mean, that's fair. If you're actually going to have options, you've got to have cards that are better or worse than others. And that's part of the game is determining what those are.
Part of the meta game.
I've explained that to people at Versus because, with Versus having these Marvel IPs, people love these characters. Like, I love Captain America. You can look around this room and there's Captain America stuff everywhere. But his main character is really not good. I mean,
his new Hydra one will be great in the next set.
Did they spoil it?
No, but
Oh,
I just
okay.
know. I just know.
Yeah,
Get
I'm
a feeling.
I'm really hoping that he's just amazing. But it just people love all of those characters. Somebody loves all of those characters, but they can't all be good. They can't,
Right.
It's just if everything's good, nothing's good,
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things where finding what is good and what isn't is part of the fun. It's part of the game. It's the meta game. It's the game outside the game. So,
Such a good game. That's actually my favorite part about any game. Like deck game where you bring like a constructed deck or something, like not like a board game, right? But like finding that thing that no one else has found. Finding that thing that is different, that is good.
Yeah.
Right? Like nothing's better.
Well, I remember you talking about
such rush.
Talking about when you came up with Kingpin, because he's the MC. We talk about the Kingpin deck, but the real MVP of that deck is Taskmaster. And the moment he was printed is the moment that you started trying to break that card, because copy's really good.
Oh yeah. Like we knew that guy was bananas, and we looked at him, and I was. The origin story of the Kingpin deck is actually really hilarious. I was at Origins, right? Like at Thorgins.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the event was on Saturday, and I think it was Thursday night. It was like Thursday night that we're sitting in the hotel room. Nobody came with me, so I'm sitting there alone. I knew Bert. I just met Bert, but we weren't hanging out because like I didn't know him that well yet.
Right.
And I'm sitting there and I'm just flipping through cards, and I was like, why would I want to we knew that we could give your opponent Taskmaster with Dash because we thought it would be funny.
Right.
And I'm flipping through my Aliens cards because that's a set that, in my opinion, is very much overlooked in the game, like in the community.
Yes.
And I was like, I found it. And I'm like, this combo's super expensive. How can I pay for it?
Yeah.
And that's where Kingpin came into play. And I sent it to Vito, and he's like, this is stupid. No, it's right? I knew I was on to something.
Yep.
Yeah, Vito says it's bad, so obviously it's great.
And I wanted to be able to build it and play it at Origins, but like I didn't have time. I didn't have the resources in a group to play with. But I was like, I actually told Bert, I was like, I can't tell you what it is, but I'm on to something. I told him that like Saturday night, and I was like, I know I'm on to something. Now the fun begins, because now I have a puzzle. I have all the pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah.
I just have to figure out how to put this bad boy together.
Yeah. That's what I do with my control and mill decks that I enjoy playing too, is trying to find out, even if the game doesn't support it, finding out how to make it work anyway.
I think this is something that's really interesting that we really didn't harp on in the metagame, right? Like that it is its own thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, is the most fun. It's more fun than actually playing the game.
Yeah.
Is coming up with something different, and like this thought, like seeing the game above the game,
and how it
and and you're trying to outsmart the other players in the room or in the community however wide it's a game worldwide. Like you're trying to be. It's like this game of cat and mouse that everyone's playing, but you're not necessarily like actively playing it with each other, but you're trying to like. It's a guessing game. You're trying to figure out like this and that, like what other people are going to do. Like, it doesn't matter what the game is.
Yeah. Because
that game's always the same, and that's the game that I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
Right? Like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's that moment of realization that like this Magic wasn't my favorite game. Versus is my favorite game, but like it's not the fact that it's not this game. It's the game above the game.
Yeah.
Is what I'm addicted to playing.
Yeah. Well, that's why we wanted to talk about this, because we agree that the metagame is something incredibly important. That's the game that, especially competitive players, though I think to a degree competitive games have this as well, cooperative games have this as well, but a lot of competitive players, that's the game they want to play. Mm-hmm. And that's why they move from game to game to game, because they want to find a game where the metagame is new and fresh and fun and challenging. And that's, but that's something that as a newer player, you hear people talk about the meta, and they may not know what that is. And so we want to discuss that so that newer players can kind of understand what that is. So we talked about this a little bit. How do you think metagames are different for cooperative games versus competitive games? And I know you're not necessarily the subject matter expert here because, as we've talked about, one of my favorite cooperative games you've never played cooperatively.
Right.
But I know you've played cooperative games, even if they're just video games and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, you've played cooperative games. How do you think that changes, or does it change how you treat a meta?
So here's the big thing about cooperative games. You have to play them with other people. So how someone looks at a metagame for a cooperative game can be both good or bad, depending on the people you're playing with.
It's true.
Because I want to find, like I said, the most efficient way to do something. I want to crush. Like, I'm going against this game. I wish to crush this game.
Right.
If my idea, I've played games that are like this, and that people are just trying to play to have fun, and I'm trying to, what's called in the video game world, like, what is it, point press? Mm-hmm. It's like when you're trying to, you're playing through the level, but you're trying to get a maximum amount of points, right. Or like you're.
Oh yeah.
And so like, I'm trying to do this thing to like maximize our value out of all of our, and people are just trying to get through it.
So you probably enjoy things more like speed runs and efficiency and things like that.
I might watch one or two speed runs. But like that's really cool, right?
Yeah.
And but now on the flip side, like so if you have conflicting viewpoints of the game, right? But if you sit down at a table, what actually comes to mind is, Lord, it's probably like 5, 6, 7 years ago. The Gears of War board game came out.
Okay.
And they were demoing it at Gen Con. Well, people are playing it and trying to have fun. When I sit down at a table, I sit down with all guys that I came with, and we are all like-minded. We are trying to find the most efficient way to play this game, and we've been told that this demo hasn't been beaten yet. So
challenge accepted.
That's exactly right. And so if you have people who come in, everyone comes into the cooperative game with that mindset, then you might butt heads every once in a while because you disagree like what the plan should be, but you have more fun as a group.
Right.
Because you're all trying to do the same thing.
Well, and that can even happen in a competitive game if people are coming in for different reasons. Because Chris and I actually had this the other night because we were playing Smash Up with our wives.
Yeah.
And
great game.
I agree. Game's fantastic. I was in a mood to play something competitive. I had just done, what did we do? Woe Ripley versus your
my
Fin Fang Foom deck, right? And so I'm playing, a deck that top 8'd at Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
He's building the best deck he's come up with yet. And, we finish that game, and then we go into Smash Up, and I'm ready to smash somebody, right? Like, that game has a lot of options.
Is there another way to play that game?
Well, there is.
It's kind of the
and it's the way that our wives play. Yeah. And our wives they're playing a game to have fun. They're not trying to make enemies at the table. They want to win, but that's sidelined to we're all sitting at a table together having fun. Chris, on the other hand, turn 1 makes everybody at the table discard a card.
2 random cards.
Yeah, 2 random cards. And my turn. Yeah, and on my turn, I'm playing aliens, and so I have a lot of bounce stuff, back to hand stuff, right? And so people are playing creatures, and I'm just like, nope, that goes back to your hand, Or I'm playing, I'm playing this guy that gives me a victory point, and I'm figuring out a way to bounce him back to my hand so I can play him again next turn, and do that over and over and over again. And I was getting really serious into it, and I wasn't having fun because our wives were not taking it seriously.
Right.
If
you guys ever want to have a competitive game with Smash Up, let me know. I happen to know some of the best combos in that game. Well, I haven't played in a long time, but I'm pretty sure.
I haven't played in a long time.
I would make you guys go, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I love that game.
It's a pretty fun one.
And then it's fun to draft it, right? Like you draft teams.
Yes.
And stuff yes. That's another game that.
That's what we did.
When it only play with certain people.
We rolled to see who went first, and they got to pick one team, and then we went around and everybody picked a team. Whoever went last got to pick twice when we went back. So the person who picked first also got to pick last. And so it's a lot of fun that way. So the only combination
Another
we
time
disqualified is Robot Zombies because I've never played a game with Robot Zombies
Did I introduce you to
where
Robot
that
Zombies?
didn't win.
Because
I don't think so. I think I found that one on my own.
That's like the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, no, actually, when I looked online, that wasn't the problem that was local to us. That most people agree that Robot Zombies is unbeatable if the player is competent halfway.
Yeah. You
So-
can recruit guys in your graveyard? Okay.
Yeah, and then Robots let you recruit more
Another
guys.
guy.
Yeah,
And
another
another
guy. Yeah, and then you get more guys from your graveyard. So,
Robot Zombies.
um,
I haven't played that game. Because there are games that I've only allowed to play in certain groups because of my competitive nature.
Yeah.
And I've realized that, right? And
Right.
That's one of those games. So I keep getting sets, but like I don't get to play. I thought I'd play the game in a couple of years, but
yeah,
I lie and wait for the right group to come along
that makes sense.
so that I can get kicked out of that group. Too.
Well, and sometimes you make meta calls not based on what's best, but based on who you're playing with, right? Like Chris
Yeah.
kind of mentioned earlier, he plays versus with Brandy, his wife, and he's probably not going to play Kingpin or Will Ripley, like these decks that just say, "Hey, the stuff you play doesn't matter because I'm going to control everything you do."
Right.
And maybe like I haven't played against Brandy in a long time, but I usually don't play control against that. And I have a group of people that I play versus, and we used to play Magic together, and I would joke with them that I don't bring all my decks to when we play because I have decks that I play at tournaments and I have decks that I keep friendships with, because if I play the decks that I bring to tournaments, which are like these mill and discard, they're really cancerous. They cancel the other person's turn. They're just not fun for the other guy. I don't want to lose a friendship playing this card game, and so I'm not going to bring it to a kitchen table matchup.
That's how you weed out your weak friends.
Yeah, now see, playing in you guys' group, I would play those decks because you guys appreciate the challenge, and then you guys tell me, yeah, this deck is trash because of this, and I get better.
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
Why did you bring your fun decks? I thought you said to bring your...
I thought we were getting serious.
Welcome to the B team.
Oh, man. So we've definitely touched on this subject a lot already, but how do you guys think the internet has affected the metagame?
So I got to start with back in my day.
Because we're so old.
Before we had access to
I am older than both of you, first off.
I
So
don't think that's right. How old are you?
30.
Already?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Welcome to the B team.
So anyways,
I'm a month out.
so anyways,
Because I'm like, if he's going to brag about remembering before the internet, I'm definitely remembering before the internet.
no, okay.
I'm at you,
So back in my day,
back in our day.
back in our day, I guess. Whenever I first started playing Magic, for example, even back with video games, you couldn't go online and see what the guide for a game was or what other people were playing. You couldn't go in NetDeck or get your decks online.
There
and
used
just
to
put
be
it
a
together.
market for strategy
Exactly.
guides. Like, physically.
I am so surprised to see them at Walmart every time I go in.
I used to subscribe to magazines that gave me the price lists for cards when I played Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah, and then every once in a while they'd have articles when they'd have the big tournaments.
Right.
They'd have articles about deck lists and stuff like that, but that was like quarterly tops that you'd get that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So really your metagame back in those days was, who you played with frequently, like your friends, or if you did have a card shop in the area, you could go to that. But really most of the time it was just the friends that you had at school, and that was your metagame. But now it's a lot different with the internet.
Yeah, because back then I was playing Pokemon, DBZ, Yu Hakusho, things like that. Yu Hakusho was kind of after the internet. So, I don't know if it was on this take or on the one that we lost, but like I was talking about recognizing like regional metagames, like what regions play, was huge for me, right? Like because when I would go to Chicago for a regional, if I'd go down to Texas for a regional, I knew, like after a while, I knew what people played there, so I knew like how to attune to that, because it's both a good thing and a bad thing, the internet, for the metagame. Because now everyone has access to information faster, so things can change so much faster.
Right.
Which, if you are adaptive enough, that's great.
Yeah.
But if you just want to learn your deck and play it for 3 months, it's not as good for you, right? It just depends on your style. I love change. I love like things are evolving and things are different. Like I get to play this for a while. I get bored with things fast, so I can change to this deck, and I get to change to this. Because like the constant movement is great.
Right.
But if you're the type of person who's like, I like this deck that I came up with, because it beats these decks, your dominance over these decks aren't going to last as long because these decks aren't going to be that deck for very long.
Right.
As when they used to be. A really good example was Pokemon. Like in the first couple sets, there was a deck called the Haymaker. It was basic Pokemon, and you could just try it like you would play very effective trainer cards, and you just had very efficient guys.
Right.
This deck was dominant for in the neighborhood 6 months, almost a year, and like multiple sets come out.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I think it was a couple sets before it got knocked out.
But there were decks that beat it if you could figure it out. But this information doesn't come because the information wasn't as
accessible.
Right.
You can't pull out the internet of your pocket like you can now.
Yeah, we didn't have supercomputers in our pockets everywhere.
But it depends on your style. But that's how it is. That's how the internet has changed. It's so much faster.
Definitely. Yeah, and you know, on the surface, I think that you can get some really neat things because you now have access to, you know, depending on the size of your game community, potentially thousands of people that are all play testing and posting their test results and their decks that they've come up with,
different combos
and stuff. Yeah, so you get this pool of thousands of minds that are coming up with different things, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that you run into is we've talked about metagames and psychology. Groupthink is a real, actual thing, and the internet is not immune to it. And so we can run into things like Thorigins. There were so many people, as you said before, got onto that mass thinking mob mentality wagon and said, this is Thor's cancer, this game is unbalanced. And that was the end of the discussion in their minds because there was nothing that could beat Thor. And yes, there were tons of people who were quietly working out ways to defeat Thor. Some of them less quietly, but, you know, it just, all the people who were talking about Thor being bad were so much louder. And here we are on the other side of Gen Con, and nobody's talking about that anymore. And it's amazing how this one event just changes that groupthink. And now people believe it's a healthy meta, so people are more willing to try different things.
Another way the internet has affected it is the idea that you can console with other people who you normally couldn't so easily. I get sent deck lists every day.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the same 4 or 5 people. Hey, what do you think about this? Well, this would be good. Like, try it with this and this instead of this. And, like, and then you constantly just cycle through ideas because if you have a group of people who play together a lot and they realize this style is good and you develop a style as a group, you're not going to see this over here.
Right.
Or out in left field because you need people who play in different environments and people who think different ways. And you have more access to that with people that you interact with once or twice a week or once or twice a month, rather than people that you play with weekly or every day.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I know, you know, for you and Vito over there at Build Better, you guys have people like Bert and Kirk that aren't local. They're on the other side of the country from us.
Bert's in New York. We've got a guy in Detroit, a couple guys that we talk to off and on, in Vegas, LA.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's literally across everywhere.
Yeah.
The guys in Scoop UK, which are over in the UK.
Yeah, yeah, they're across the ocean, you know. It's pretty amazing some of the things that the internet can do for us in that regard. All right, so closing thoughts.
You think your meta's good? Come at me, bro. I'd love to figure out the meta.
Yep.
Yeah, I like what you were saying earlier. I really hope it was on this take where you were talking about how the game that you the big realization for you is that the game that you're addicted to is the metagame. It's not Magic. It's not Versus. It's not Legendary. It's the metagame. This process of outthinking your opponent and outsmarting your opponent before you've even sat down at the table with him, and before he's even built his deck. You're trying to figure out what he's going to put in his deck before he does even.
Yeah. And I will say though that Versus is the dominant game, and it is the greatest of games, if you don't count the metagame.
And so we've had 2 weeks in a row where we talk a lot about Versus. To anyone who doesn't have Versus and you're looking to purchase it, please check out gamergym.net. We'd love it if you use our link to purchase it. And of course, we'll have other information up there. Some of the other games we talked about. Pictures, and I'd like to get a deck list for Kingpin on there if that's all right with you.
You can put my link up to my YouTube.
There you go. I will have a link
I have
to
a video, the deck tech of Kingpin.
There you go. So we'll link the deck tech for Kingpin.
We have an Enchantress one, and we've got another one that we're going to work on, but we're getting really busy with our league videos.
Well, and tell us a little bit about, in case we have people who don't know what you're doing, tell us about this league that you're going through right now, just a little bit.
So we
Shameless plug.
Started. I will. I did it on the other podcast I was on. I will do it till the cows come home. We are doing a thing called the Decks Built Quickly. Basically, we meet up. It has been on Tuesdays. We're going to start switching now that we have one more week before we've hit the halfway point. So we will switch it to another day. We're going to shoot for Saturdays. You will show up with your cards, and the reason this works so great is Versus when you buy a set, you have a play set of everything. So you have everything you need, right? There's nobody who has an advantage over anyone else because they have more cards, right?
Right.
So
money.
No more. Yeah, exactly. The game is super cheap to get into.
Oh yeah, no, I think I spent $150 on.
And you've got 3 years worth of product.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody just Wednesday actually about this, and they were like, "Hey, I spent $600 on Magic updating my Commander deck," and I'm like, "If you spent $600 on Versus and paid retail, you'd have 2, maybe 3 sets of everything.
Yeah,
that's including monsters that just came out.
Right. And so we're really playing off of that, right? And so you'll show up, and we're going to go, okay, this is tonight's format. We take the rules of the game and we put a little twist on it. So maybe everyone's attack and defense are swapped. Or maybe at the beginning of every round, you choose your opponent's MC. They've built a deck, but you get to choose what your opponent's MC is. So it might not be good for the deck. It might be good for the deck because you don't know.
You don't know what's in their deck.
The first week was instead of playing with just one MC in play, you played with 4 MCs in play. Right? So we take a little thing to tweak the game just enough that it makes you want to build the deck different.
Yeah.
And then you have 10 minutes to build your deck. And then after time's up, we play Swiss. Top 2 competitors, that's what you see on the YouTube channel.
Wow.
They, after 3 rounds, or however many rounds Swiss is, we take the top 2 who have not qualified yet. They will play off in a best of 3. So we'll maybe tweak the rules just a little bit more than they already were. And we have a draft to see who you're going to play as your MC to make it up the challenge level, right? But
definitely.
The idea is to teach people how to open up their building skills, right? It's supposed to be a real exercise to build for building. And so now we go, okay, you have three decks you have to build. You can't have more than 4 copies among all your decks. And you have 20 minutes to build. You had 10 minutes to build 1 deck. That was tough enough.
Yeah.
Now you have 20 minutes to build 3 decks.
Oh man.
And then you play best of 3. The winner will go on to, we're going to do an 8-man bracket. It's all free. And I'm giving out a bunch of promos and prizes and stuff like that for the people who make it into the 8-man bracket. And we're going to record it all. It's definitely, you can tell that we like professional wrestling over here. Because there's definitely a lot of characters and a lot of personas.
Right.
We're trying to give people the ability to watch the game and enjoy the game, but we want them to enjoy the entire experience.
The kind of spectacle that you're making
exactly.
of what's happening.
We want rivalry.
Which I've only seen the first one. I haven't caught up yet. But It's definitely a spectacle. There's a
We're
show
working on getting
involved.
a championship belt, so that will be cool.
That's pretty incredible.
And yeah, it's something that's really fun to watch, but also like gets you thinking about the cards.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So
definitely.
we're gonna try to start upping our deck techs a little bit more, and we might have something else big coming early next year, but we're still working on the details on that. So.
All right. Well, once again, this is John. You guys can find him on YouTube at Build Better. We'll be linking to his page. Thanks again for being here, John.
Yeah, definitely.
And you guys can find us at www.gamergym.net. Once again, you can email us at podcast@gamergym.net, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at GamerGym Podcast. I played around on Twitter, and it turns out it's not nearly as complicated as I was worried about it being. So yeah, it's not too bad.
I had one, but I
that's the same.
But yeah, so we'd love to hear from you guys. Subject ideas, questions, comments. We would love to hear feedback. And our question for you guys for this week is, what game has your favorite metagame and why? Why do you like that game's metagame so much? Thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Eric's.